Hello and welcome to our latest and greatest edition of Better Together Arizona. I am so excited about this conversation. My dear friend, Monica Villalobos, is here with us today. I know this might be hard to believe, my friend, but there are some people that perhaps have not met you or do not know.
It's not true.
Well, you might have been living under a rock for the last decade or so. But I think it would be great if we started our conversation if you really just kind of dove into like your remarkable journey at the Arizona Hispanic Chamber and, you know, what it's like to be the president and CEO.
Well, thank you so much, Angela. Always a great friend and mentor to me, and I appreciate that. If my infamy doesn't precede me, then I started with the Chamber back in 2012 as a consultant working on Datos, the state of Arizona's Hispanic market, and just fell in love with the mission and the potential to make impact and change. And so I stayed on. In 2019, I was selected for the president and CEO role, and it has been fun and busy.
It's hard to believe. So it's been almost 6 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the chamber has just, I think, grown and evolved so much under your leadership. And we're so grateful, I think, obviously, for all the Hispanic Chamber is doing, in particular, because, you know, we're in some very interesting times right now.
We are. And thank you so much for your support. I know I love the name of the show, Better Together, because we've been doing that for a dozen years,
yeah,
you and I. And so I think it makes sense. These partnerships are absolutely critical because we can't do it alone, right?
No.
And we can't make as much impact alone either, which is one of the things that I've always appreciated about our friendship and our partnership.
Yeah, I have too. And, you know, we just kind of roll up our sleeves and get into it.
Yep.
Okay, so it's Hispanic Heritage Month, which is awesome. But we are living in some really, really interesting times. So from your perspective, what does Hispanic Heritage Month mean from like Arizona's civic perspective and into the business community as well? Like, why is this such an important month?
Right. Well, I appreciate Hispanic heritage, and I'm grateful that people are enthusiastic about celebrating us. But I have to remind folks that I feel a little like elf on a shelf.
Yeah.
You know, I get pulled out September 15th, and then they move me around in all these different places to go and speak because everyone's celebrating Hispanic heritage, right? And so I think we're going to call it sombrero on a shelf now. And so I do appreciate it. But I do like to remind folks that we are here all year long.
365 days.
365 days, and we're contributing all 365 days. And it's important not to lose sight of the fact that these contributions aren't just September 15th to October 15th.
Well, right. No, and, you know, we've had this conversation about the LGBTQ plus community, too, because, I mean, it's funny because we are also in October. It's LGBTQ
say, what month
plus.
Do you get?
We get
October.
2.
You get 2 months.
We get 2.
Wow.
And I had someone say to me, I just think it's so unfair that the LGBTQ community gets 2 months because we get Pride in June, and in October is LGBTQ History Month. And what my response has been is, well, as soon as we get equal rights, we'll gladly give you one of those months back.
There you go. So I love that answer.
You can have whichever one you want. We just want equal treatment under the law.
Imagine that.
Yeah, but to your point, the Hispanic community makes huge contributions throughout the year in this great state. And like, I mean, has since prior to us actually going into statehood, right?
That little border thing. Yeah.
That whole border thing. And so I think it is really important to have conversations with civic leaders and elected officials and the business community about like how they can authentically be like really in relationship with, in my mind's eye, one of the most powerful and remarkable communities in our state and in our nation.
Yeah, I mean, Latinos are 30% of the state, 40% of Phoenix Metro, and 50% of K through 12. And they're spending $72 billion into Arizona's economy. So If you're going to read the tea leaves, it's pretty obvious
Yeah.
that the numbers tell us that the future of Arizona, and I would say the present of Arizona, is Hispanic. If you're doing business in Arizona, you are a Hispanic business. That's just the customer base, right? And it's quickly becoming the supply chain as well. And so anybody's, whatever business you're in, whatever industry you're in, needs to take that into account and create a strategy that is inclusive, not just of Hispanics, but of all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we may be the largest minority majority, but we want to bring everyone along with us.
Well, and speaking of minority majority, like Maricopa County has been a minority majority, I want to say since like 2008, right? And Pima too. Like it's been like,
yes,
we're going on almost 2 decades, right?
Yep.
And for folks that maybe aren't familiar with the term, that's when you bring all of our diverse communities together, right? We now make up the majority of the population.
Right.
I am Hispanic adjacent. See how I just tried to like throw myself in
no,
over
absolutely.
there?
Absolutely. No, we claim you.
Thank you. Thank you. Call me amiga. But like you just had Datos 2025. I know some of those stats you just threw out are like fresh. They just came out of Datos. How do you work alongside the business community and really elected officials in like sharing this data in a way so that they have a better understanding on who we are currently and who we are becoming as a state, and I would say as a nation?
I agree. I think that the state of Arizona's Hispanic market is really about owning our own narrative and dispelling the myths that are out there, right?
Yep.
The myth busting, exactly. And it's, the story is Latinos are putting in to Arizona and to the country more than they're taking out. When we look at Latinos nationally, there are about 65 million Hispanics in the U.S. That does not count the 3 million in Puerto Rico, nor does it count for the undocumented.
Is Puerto Rico a part of the United States?
Shocking, right? It seems like people are just understanding that for the first time as a territory, but yes.
Just a little reference to Bad Bunny.
Yeah, exactly.
So excited to see him during the Super Bowl.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be so much fun.
In Spanish.
Yeah, in Spanish. Can you imagine? Yeah, it's crazy. But Latinos are spending $4.1 trillion into the economy. So even
throughout the U.S.
Throughout the U.S., yeah. So even though we're only 20% of the population, we are 30% of all the new GDP produced by the U.S. It is now, U.S. Latinos are now the 4th largest economy in the world and forecasted to surpass Germany by 2027.
So, and my guess is because Arizona's Latino population, if I'm correct, skews a little bit younger, right?
Absolutely, about 15 years.
Right. So younger populations tend to spend more, right? And so you're spending more, you're putting more into the economy, you're buying your home, you're buying the house, you're doing all these things.
Yep.
You're not a Gen Xer trying to think about retirement and going, oh, well, we're going to start thinking about perhaps putting less into the economy, right?
Right. That's exactly the right thing. You also have Latinos that are hitting those milestones. So as you mentioned, getting married, buying a house, having a baby, not always in that order, but that's okay. That's okay. And so, we see that future. And for us, trying to talk to the, 5 million Hispanic businesses in the U.S. that are contributing over $800 billion in annual revenues, it's really important to understand that we need to be better at understanding the intersection between education, business, and public policy. We all speak a very different language, but the outcome is dependent on all of those stakeholders.
So talking about that intersectionality and really the world that we're living in right now, I feel like we're not connecting education and business and really the output and then really the future of who we want to be. We have a administration that it seems to me, in no uncertain terms, is just really wants to divide diverse communities and conquer, right? And unfortunately, the Hispanic community, all diverse communities, really seem to be in the crosshairs. How do you find the conversation about just the remarkable worth and breadth of Arizona's Hispanic community and the U.S.'s Hispanic community. How is that working with the current narrative coming out of the administration? Is this a tougher conversation than it has been in years past?
It has, because as you know, at the Arizona Hispanic Chamber, we focus a lot on data and evidence. We're funny that way. And so when you have an administration that is
Fires people if they don't like the data?
well, they're putting things out there that aren't cannot be deduced from the data, cannot be linked to the data. Certainly, it makes me nervous, right? Our commitment has always been responsible, reliable, and relevant data to the community. And so it's hard to have a conversation when the other side isn't using the same tools.
The actual data.
The same tools. And so that certainly makes it more difficult. The myths, it feels like we were making a lot of headway, and then this administration started, and it opened up a whole new kind of emboldened narrative that is not rooted in fact and truth. And so right now, learning how to combat that is our most challenging effort.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So, in the LGBTQ plus community, on day one, there were 5 executive orders, meant to discriminate against members of our community, and then there were the anti-DEI executive orders, which I think make both of our jobs much more difficult because, again, it seems like this is an administration that is really going out of its way to villainize people of diverse backgrounds, orientations, and just, but we're actually the majority, right? Like, I think this is the thing that people, and I feel like that's why we've got this rub right now, is there's this concern from, I'm going to call it concern, from people in power who don't want to lose power and have to negotiate with members of diverse communities who, because of their lived experiences, may see different types of solutions than are currently being, put together. How's that?
Absolutely. And I think that it's not just that, it's also accountability on our end, right? We have a responsibility, and we have to be accountable to ourselves to create a strategy, to create that myth busting, to not just be reactive to everything that comes out of any administration, right? We want to be proactive. We want to have our strategy. I always tease that, if we were our own country, US Latinos would be very powerful, but we're not that organized, And so, being able to pull together with other communities and say, listen, we've already won. Like, we are already the majority. And we want to work together.
Yeah.
We want to do it differently than the last majority, in essence. And so I think it's important to share the data, the information. People just don't know what they don't know.
No, they don't. And there's so much noise swirling around. And so I think one of the things that is so wonderful about your approach is, number one, it's grounded in facts and research and actual data, right? That is substantive, but also it is very hard, I think, to argue with data as well, right? And so it's I think a wonderful way to kind of cut through the noise.
Yeah.
People have to be willing to listen, right? And to be open to what they're being presented.
And take the emotion out of the conversation. It's a very polarizing topic, right? And understanding that, these are facts, and they're facts from our government, by the way, right? And they're vetted by subject matter experts.
Yeah.
And, there's all kinds of credibility that comes along with it. And so not being overly offended, not being, just say, here's where I am, right? Here's what I see. You can insult me, you can say whatever you want, but I'm still here.
Right. And we're not going anywhere.
Right.
My big thing has always been, like, you just don't take things personally, right? And which can be difficult.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to say that it's not, in particular when people are, being disparaging. However, the only way we're going to give people the opportunity, I think, to expand on whatever their viewpoints, their ideology and viewpoints are towards any diverse community is to really give them the space and grace to get to know people that are different from them.
Right.
You know?
Right. I mean, that firsthand experience makes a world of difference, and finding out that you actually have things in common with someone who's on the polar opposite end of your political ideology is fascinating, right? Like we can still be friends. We can still enjoy each other's company. We can still, but we're going to disagree on some things. And I don't know that I want people around me that agree with me on everything, right?
Well, and I think that's such an important conversation right now is this idea of this political ideology, like where everybody thinks there's this sameness, and that is what's like more perfect. It absolutely strips us from just our humanity, our variety of experiences, and it doesn't produce like better results either, right? Like it's important to, and the business community knows this, to bring diverse voices around the table to work on whatever the solution is that you're looking for, right? Whether it's creating a widget, or something else, because when you bring diverse viewpoints around the table, you get better results.
You get more innovation. You get more competitiveness.
People are healthier.
All of that. Everybody feels heard, and I'm not saying, we need to have this, the type of democracy where every single just logistically, often it's difficult. What we really have in the U.S. is a representative democracy, right? But now that's breaking down because you have folks in office that aren't even listening to their constituency. And so I think it's education for sure. Also, one of the things I've admired about your leadership is you are persistent.
Yeah.
You're not mean. You don't bully. You're persistent. And you continue to ask in a very nice way. And eventually we all get there, right?
Yeah.
But I think...
And the journey is so important too, right? Like we can't be in such a hurry to get to wherever this destination is that we're trying to get to, that we don't give ourselves the opportunity to learn all the things the journey is so important. What we found, because it's remarkable that we're 18 years old in December, but
wow.
I know, crazy.
Yeah.
And I have not aged a bit. Not at all. But that walking alongside our partners and giving them the space and the grace to get to this place, right, is it's so transformative, and it really creates such trust and just deep and authentic relationship.
Right.
And that is what has really, I think, put us individually and organizationally in positions to just never waver and just always be there. When either of us like sends a text message, it's just like, what do you need? Right? Oh, wow, that sounds tough.
I feel like we always pick up on like mid conversation, like it just keeps going, right? It's such a great collaboration, and it's so important. But I agree with you. We were talking earlier about ground zero. I have friends who call me from California, where I grew up, or from New York, where I lived for 10 years. And they're like, what are you doing in Arizona? Like, they don't even like us. And my response is always, why aren't you in Arizona? This is ground zero.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to fight the fight, you've got to be in the eye of the storm, right? You've got to be in the middle of it. And so that, to me, is the potential I was talking about earlier, right? The potential to make a greater impact. And I think that's why we're both here, right? And as I've said in the past, I mean, in my perfect world, when people talk about legacy, I'm like, my legacy, I hope, is that people will be able to entirely forget that we were
in existence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would very much like to work myself out of a job and work one community out of, and needing to be around, and I do see opportunity in the adversity, and I've often said, I'm like, Arizona is like 2 clicks away from just being so awesome, and I feel like we are fast approaching the Y in the road, and I really do think that the outcome of the midterm elections next year, leading into the 2028 presidential elections for Arizona, are going to be very determinative as far as like, what do the next 20 years look like for us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We will have ripples across the country. I feel like we can be a bellwether in many ways of what's to come. And it's been a battleground state, and people feel it. They really do. But I'm encouraged by the fact that people have a voice. for the most part. They just have to use it. They just have to exercise it. And not enough people are doing that.
Well, to your point, I find folks like much less willing to like folks seem to be in like partners, and they seem much more uncomfortable than they have in, I would literally say, for like close to a decade. This discomfort in using your voice and raising awareness it's palpable, right? It's very tangible. And when I talk to leaders, they're just like, if we come out on something, we're just going to get the you know what kicked out of us, right?
Right. You don't want to put a target on anyone's back. And I know we've had a lot of press calling us. Can we want to talk to a business owner who will go on the record as the, this or that or whatnot? And our response has been like, I can ask, but I'm not going to put a target on anyone's back, right? Yeah. The last thing we need is someone's name coming out in the Wall Street Journal and, all of a sudden you've got a target list for the administration. So I think it's important to understand that while you're right, we have accountability, we have a voice, we need to strategically use it, right? And also not put people in harm's way.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest balance. I mean, we want to tell that story, but people have their own stories. We can't tell it for them. We can only give them the opportunity to tell that story. And the heaviness that everyone feels in the country right now is that resistance, I think, that you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get a little deeper into this, right? Because I think one of the things I've always enjoyed so much about us organizationally, and just, it starts with our friendship, is that we've been actionable allies to one another, right? I will never forget 1062. I will never forget the conversation we had during SB 1062. I will never forget the Arizona Hispanic Chamber writing a letter, and all of the letters that went to then Governor Jan Brewer. But your chamber made a very distinct point of putting in a couple of sentences talking about how valuable LGBTQ people were to this great state. You were thoughtful. And you walked alongside of us when we were most vulnerable. Yeah. I feel like, again, we're in that vulnerable place, right? This is where we're at. We had conversations earlier this year about the minority business supplier, work that the Hispanic Chamber does, and how can we be helpful? How do we have the conversation with folks in a broader level to help really everyday Arizonans and businesses and organizations from all different walks of life understand that now is the time that we need to show up for one another. Right. Now is the time that we need to be actionable allies for one another. That the call to action needs to be bigger than the fears that we all have, and that if we choose to do this together, the likelihood of coming through this, while scraped and bruised, but coming through these next few years successful, is much better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it takes a lot of courage, right, to do those things. And when other nonprofits, in Q1, when other nonprofits were losing their funding, no one wanted to say anything for fear that they would lose other donors because, maybe federal funding had been cut so much. You all stood by us when we announced that the federal cuts that's 40% of our revenue, of our total revenue, and helped us with a tool that you had to get the word out, not just in Arizona, but across the country. It was something that we could send people that, a prepared kind of document supporting Minority Business Development Agency, and it would send it directly to their legislators. I mean, that was huge. That was a tool we didn't know even existed, and the fact that you all were willing to share it with us and, put that out was huge. So I think it takes collaboration and courage. Those are the two things. If you're willing to do those two things, then we can be successful.
Before we started this conversation, you were asking how our newest initiative, Arizona Leaders, or Arizona Leadership Network, is going. So the mantra is around 5 new C's for Arizona, and collaboration and courage are definitely a part of the 5 C's, right? Like when we come together, see, look,
I love it.
But when we come together and we care for one another, another of the 5 C's, when we care and we collaborate and we are courageous enough to move forward and be uncomfortable together, we all come out of this better. And so I think for me, in this moment, my call to action is to care enough to stay here, to your point, and to invest in what we can be together if we choose to be.
Yeah. And I think that, there's not enough said about safe spaces and safe places. And it's true for everyone. It's true for us. I know I can call you with a question that I have about the community, and you're going to be completely honest with me. The late Robin Reed, I would do the same thing with him, with the Black Chamber, and just be like, did I do something wrong here? Like, I can be vulnerable and be courageous at the same time, right? Because it takes that kind of energy to move things forward. And back to the name of the show, we're just better together.
We are. Any closing thoughts here, my friend?
I think it's just, this is a wonderful example of collaboration and courage and vulnerability and all of those things. I think it's something that it's a leap of faith that people have to take. You don't always know where it's going to end up. And more often than not, it ends up in really good places like this.
Yeah, it does. Thank you for leaning.
Thank you.